Is everybody having a good time so far? Yeah. So next up is going to be Croat. And yes, it rhymes with poet, and I didn't even know it. So that's how I remember her last name. Ann is with War, and she's going to do our next presentation.
All right, good morning, everybody. This is the first time I've ever been asked to present at a presentation, so I'm a little bit nervous, and hopefully that will chillax. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to say thank you to each of you for taking the time to join us in our nation's capital to stand up for the nearly 1 million people forced to register and their many loved ones. Democracy is not always easy, especially for us, society's castaways. I am somewhat new to this movement compared to a lot of you, so I thought I'd take a few minutes to tell you my personal story and what brought me to this advocacy. And Joey tells me that I need to also share that about a year and a half ago, I was in a bicycle accident. I had a cerebral hematoma. I was in the hospital for 10 days. I thought my name was Pajamas for 4 days. I'm lucky to be alive, but it occasionally affects my ability to quickly turn my thoughts into words. You probably will not notice this in the speech that I've been working on for 3 weeks, but please be patient if that happens when I have a conversation with you. I believe I was destined to join this movement. I've been a defender of the underdog since the day I was born, and no better underdogs could I find than the people forced to register and their loved ones. I also consider myself to be very sex positive, which is something I believe our society and our movement needs a lot more of. One of my editors asked me, what does that mean? So just in case you have the same question, sex positive means having a positive attitude towards sex, embracing sexuality as a normal and healthy part of life, and advocating for open communication about sex without shame or judgment, as long as all sexual activity is consensual and does not harm others. Essentially, it's about viewing sex as something to be celebrated and not stigmatized. I myself am a survivor of the kind of interfamilial sexual assault that so many of us have endured. My assaults happened over the course of many years and were minor compared to others. I did not hate my older cousin then or now. He was not on the registry. And over time, especially after reading Harmful to Minors by Judith Levine, I learned to view what happened in those years differently. I began to understand that he was really a child growing into an adult, just like I was. I don't consider myself a victim because I don't think that helps. I forgave him and myself years ago, and I moved on. My cousin wasn't on the registry, nor would putting him on the registry have helped either of us in any way. My soon-to-be daughter-in-law, who's right now shopping for wedding dresses with her partner, who is a girl, so they're going to spend so much money. My soon-to-be daughter-in-law's father is currently incarcerated and will be on the registry when he is released next year. The odds that he will reoffend are vanishingly small, and the addition of his name to the registry will only continue to bring more pain to his family. My younger daughter could easily have been put on the registry, along with a slightly older boy, for something that got them both kicked out of their high school. Recognizing that my daughter's decisions could have put that slightly older boy on the registry is something I think about a lot, especially since I know that the older boy happened to be Black, which put him at a higher risk of prosecution. And lastly, my biggest connection to this issue is that the love of my life and my partner of 4.5 years is on the registry. During our time together, I have seen firsthand the damage done by the registry. All the struggles of being on probation, the one-size-fits-all therapy, the polygraphs, etc., the getting in trouble because you happen to look at track athletes running in their scantily clothes, and then a whole raided on your house. But I've also seen firsthand the benefits that my unconditional love and acceptance has had on his healing from all that trauma. I'm standing here today because I once believed, like so many others, that the sex offense registry was protecting children. But life has a way of forcing us to confront the truth. And for me, that moment first came when my own child's normal teenage sexual behavior could have led to a lifetime of punishment. That's when I started asking questions. What I found was a system that doesn't protect children. It harms them. It doesn't serve justice. It destroys lives. And a system that claims to prevent sexual harm while doing nothing of the sort. I used to trust that lawmakers had our best interest at heart, that policies like the registry were grounded in evidence and reason. But when you start digging, the reality is horrifying. Children are criminalized for developmentally normal sexual behavior. Families are ripped apart, and the cycle of harm continues unchecked and unchallenged. The registry has not only failed to prevent abuse, but has created new victims, whole families of people who will never live free of the stigma and punishment imposed by this broken system. We need to start helping people see the people on the registry as human beings and start having some empathy with us. First, let's examine sexual crimes from the perspective of the injured party. And I'm sorry, I didn't read Amber's speech. I'm going to repeat a few things. Victims of all sorts of crimes want things that the legal regime actually steals from them. They want to be heard and validated. They want a sincere apology and a demonstration that the person who caused the harm understands the harm they caused. They want assurances that their safety is being considered and that steps are being taken to prevent further harm. They often want to understand why. Sometimes they even want amends. Very, very few of these things ever happens in a courtroom or through the criminal legal system. In a court setting, not only will the victims not hear an apology, the defendant usually takes the fifth and says nothing at all, or far more likely, more than 95%, they sign a plea deal, and they never end up in a courtroom at all. So very few of the victims' needs are met. Many people in rape cases call the trial the second rape because it can be so damaging to the victim and their friends and family. What victims of violent crime actually want, as far as the consequences for the person who caused the harm, has been studied. In a 2016 study of 800 people who had reported crimes, victims were asked what they wanted to see happen to the person who did the crime. And the truth is that victims and survivors of violent crimes prefer investment in crime prevention rather than long prison sentences, 82 to 14%. They prefer holding people accountable through different options beyond just prison by a factor of 69 to 25%. Other good news on this front is that people are starting to choose restorative action over legal options when they're given a chance. In cases involving adults accused of sexual crimes, up to 77% of victims chose to engage in restorative justice practices. For cases with young people who have caused the harm, this participation rate increased to 89%. These figures suggest a high level of victims' willingness to participate in restorative justice alternatives when they are available. In fact, right now, there are 5 states with restorative justice alternatives and 4 more with restorative justice laws on the books. The laws sometimes tend to eliminate people accused of crimes of a sexual nature, but Colorado is a shining example of a well-reasoned program offering restorative justice to violent crime and sex crimes. I'm guessing in no small part due to the hard work of Dr. Jean Ira Katz. Now let's think about sexual harm from the crimes of the perspectives of mothers. Imagine your daughter coming to you and saying, "My brother bit me." What would the mom do next? Well, you would go talk to your son, and through some combination of carrots and sticks, you eventually convince him to quit biting. There are no adults who still bite. We are very effective at quelling that behavior in childhood. Hannibal Lecter doesn't count. But if your daughter comes to you complaining that my brother touched my private parts, well, now you have a problem. If you tell someone outside your family, or even sometimes inside your family, that this happened, the odds are high that there are going to be some serious consequences for your son and for your whole family. The odds are high that your son is going to be punished in one way or another. He might even end up on the registry. So, what do you do? Well, whether we like it or not, what often happens is what families have been doing for generations, my family included. Don't leave your kids with grandpa. Like everybody sort of understood that. You stuff it down. You try to get your daughter to stuff it down. Because of course you love both your children. You would probably try to talk to your son about it, but there's no guarantee that talking to him is going to fix the problem. And you might send your son to talk to a professional, but if you do, since therapists in all states are mandated reporters, there's a good chance your son and your whole family ends up on the registry. Also, I recently learned that since so many people experience sexual trauma as children, and they never seek healing from that trauma, often when people see the shadows of abuse around them, their brains just shut down. They just, the same way that, I forgot about what was happened to me between, 11 and 17, your brain just has a way to shut that stuff down. So the shadows of abuse start to become apparent and people's brains just shut down and they become blind to it. This is our real problem. Next, let's examine sexual harm from the perspective of a mother of an adult son who's been accused of a sexual crime. I get lots of calls from these heartbroken moms. They love their sons. They often end up using a lot of their own money to help their sons pay for lawyers, appeals, bonds, polygraphs, therapies, fees. Sometimes they find themselves shunned by their support circles for the heinous crime of abandoning their sons. Not abandoning their sons. Some of them are lucky enough to find their way to places like the Facebook community for wives of people forced to register, or to one of our many advocacy groups, but many others just suffer in silence and loneliness. Next, let's examine sexual harm from the perspective of the wife of the person forced to register. These women have the most difficult issues to tackle. For women who choose to stay with their partner, most don't get a lot of empathy for staying with him through the enormous challenges of arrest, trial, incarceration, parole, and the registry. Quite the opposite, these women find themselves abandoned, shunned, and hated by their families, friends, and support circles. Even those of us who chose our partners long after the incarceration is over still face harsh judgment for choosing to love someone despite their offense. The message here is clear. These people don't deserve compassion, even from their own partners. Often, women end up carrying the bulk of child rearing and money earning while their partner is incarcerated or when their partner can't find good work. If the couple has children, they are often forced to live separately from their partner, which means paying twice as much on housing for half the income. Nothing about this makes reintegration into society easier or harm less likely to occur. Next, let's look at the perspective from the children of people forced to register. Imagine being a kid, just trying to go to school, make friends, live a normal life, except you can't. Not because of anything you did, but because of something your parent did, maybe even years before you were born. That's the reality for kids whose parents are on the registry. They didn't commit a crime, they didn't break any laws, but they are paying the price anyway. And the irony? These are the very kids we're trying to protect with these laws. These kids grow up facing things no child should ever have to deal with. Friends' parents don't let them come over. Sometimes they get bullied at school because people find out about their parents' past. And housing? Forget it. A lot of places have rules that keep people on the registry from living near parks, schools, bus stops, even certain neighborhoods, which means that these families have to move all the time. Stability? That's not something these kids get to have. But isn't stability what we say kids need to grow and safe and secure? And then there's school. Some kids can't have their parent come to a parent-teacher conference or see them in a soccer game, all because of some restriction that says their parent isn't allowed near schools. And even when a parent is technically allowed, the moment school officials find out about their status, they're treated like a criminal all over again, given additional restrictions like needing an escort just to walk in the building. How do you explain that to a kid? How do you tell them that their mom or dad loves them, but legally can't be involved in their life like a lot of other parents? And if that wasn't enough, there's money problems too, because a lot of people on the registry can't get decent jobs. So now the kid isn't just dealing with social stigma and isolation, they're struggling financially too. The worst part, these kids are innocent. They did not ask for this, but the way the system works, they're punished anyway. The same laws that claim to protect them are actually harming them, making their lives harder, taking away their chance at a normal childhood. We have to ask ourselves, are we really protecting children if we're creating new victims in the process? Because right now, the system is just not just punishing the people who did the harm, it's punishing families, it's punishing children, and that is not justice. And last, let's consider the perspective of people who committed a sexual crime themselves. Some of these men are just regular guys who made stupid decisions, like not checking someone's ID before having sex with them 20 years ago when they were just barely over the age of consent line themselves, or getting addicted to porn and looking at so much of it that they eventually clicked on something they shouldn't have, because cops never take that stuff down. I once talked to a guy who was on the registry for watching AI-generated cartoon figures have sex. Someone decided that those cartoons were teenagers, so even though he got no jail time, he was put on the registry. He is now forced to live separately from his wife and 3 small children. But some of the people who offended are the thing we're all most afraid of. They are members of the very small subset of the population who are attracted to minors. Let's consider the perspective of someone attracted to minors. It is impossible to live within America without knowing that being attracted to minors is the biggest taboo. So their whole lives, they hear people say terrible things about them and call them the worst kind of person. They see websites selling products, inciting violence against them. They see Facebook groups pop up made of people who are dedicated to exposing them and who even talk about killing them, which Facebook will never take down, no matter how many times we report them. So do you think these men talk to anyone about this feeling? No. They probably just try to stuff it down. And sometimes that works. But if, God forbid, they have the gall to ask their therapist how to avoid or manage these unwelcome feelings, their therapists are mandated reporters. Sometimes they're forced to turn them into the cops, even if no crime has been committed. In several cases, clients ask their therapist for help quelling the attraction to a minor, despite having never committed a crime, and they ended up being put in a civil commitment facility with no release date, almost no legal rights. Many people in these shadow prisons end up dying there. Yet most people I talk to have never heard of this, despite the fact that civil commitment exists in 20 of our 50 states. I also wonder how many people find something titillating that they think they shouldn't because of shame, and then they go down the rabbit hole of thinking that they're really sick and undeserving of love. People who would never act on these interests. With video games, most people seem to enjoy killing other people and think nothing of it. I'm sure a few start to wonder if they're actually dangerous, even if they're not. And what happens when they get scared of their own minds? Nothing good. So let's sum this up. We've created a system where after generations of interfamilial sexual assault, when children experience abuse, their concerns are still often dismissed. I didn't have the nerve to tell my mom, but another cousin did. My mom's answer was, "Oh, get over it, that happens to everyone." So children don't have any access to healing spaces. So they grow into adults without healing from that trauma. Fast forward to their adulthood, some of these children grow up to become abusers themselves because of PTSD, acting out their undisclosed and therefore unhealed trauma. And now they definitely can't get help because if they admit their feelings to anyone, they could be incarcerated and put on the registry. So no healing for the abused, no healing for the people who committed the abuse, and the cycle continues. I think our movement needs a new playbook. This whack-a-mole system we've been trying to challenge bad laws in courts is not even keeping up. And trying to convince lawmakers in all 50 states to do right by us, it's not really working either. We've been doing both those things for over 30 years, and to me it feels like things are getting worse, not better. We're seeing more and more Facebook groups of people who are advocating the hunting of pedophiles. Bartenders who run these Facebook groups are literally beating up people forced to register on the patios of Buffalo Wild Wings. So the world is scary for all of us. But here's the thing. If we all just suffer in silence and don't push back against the haters, nothing ever changes. I think it's time for some new ideas. I believe it's time to speak our truth out loud to the masses. We need to stop preaching to the choir and instead go on a major campaign to educate the public about the truths of the registry. And I don't just mean us, the advocates who spend our days talking to each other about these problems. I mean the masses on the registry too. We all need to start having these conversations everywhere we go. That is a really scary thing to do alone. So my big idea number one is that we start working on a coming out day, but with another name like Bravery Day, so we don't piss off the LGBTQ community. We would start by making a compelling ad. Then we would start a petition of people who'd be willing to post this campaign on their social media all at once on Bravery Day, once we get to some goal of signatures on the petition. Just like the LGBTQ movement benefited from the distraction of a lot of people coming out on the same day, our movement would benefit from the shared bravery of many people posting our ad on social media all on the same day. Doing this together will make it feel safer for us, and it will hopefully be too much for the haters to effectively attack. And maybe we even have a canned response for when people post a mean response, encouraging anyone who has unhealed trauma from childhood harm to seek healing through a restorative action circle. The campaign will have a much bigger impact on the viewers when they see that many people posting the same message all at once. Maybe we even buy some airtime and post it on television or the internet, but only after we get to some large number of signers on the petition. And I realize that this is probably too scary for most people who are actually on the registry themselves. So what we're aiming for is their moms and dads, their neighbors, their friends, and their grandmas. We hope they can be convinced to admit that they have woken up to the harm of the registry. The ad would show the brave faces of people who are willing to simply say, I love someone on the registry. It would start with one face, then two faces, then four, then eight, till the whole screen fills with tiny faces of people saying those simple words. Then we'd show a few short videos of people who were being harmed by the registry in very empathy-worthy ways. A mom whose kid is being bullied at school because his dad is on the registry. A dad who now isn't allowed to drop his son off at school because they have a new superintendent, and he crossed the age of consent line 25 years ago when he was barely over the line himself. A wife who's raising an infant alone because her husband, who served no prison time the first time, made some paperwork mistake, and now he's in prison for 2 years, and she's raising a 1-year-old by herself. And I have a number of people who've already said, like, I'll go public, I'll make a video for you. Then some things people probably don't know, like the number of people who are put on the registry as juveniles, along with either short texts or short videos of young men telling their relatable stories, many of which will be easy to imagine our own teenagers and young men doing, young people doing. Then the big words, you're wrong about the registry, with a link at the end to learn more. An idea like this will require the collaboration of many, many people, which is why I'm so excited to see our movement come together in this coalition at the Supreme Court Vigil. If you like my idea and want to help me bring it to fruition and got a little time, please reach out. And if not, it will come to you when it's ready. My big idea number 2, another crucial shift in perspective that I think we must encourage is redirecting fear away from the people on the registry and toward the registry itself. Because the real threat isn't from strangers down the street. It's the reality that our own children, partners, and loved ones could easily end up on the registry. Shockingly, between 25 and 35% of those on the registry were placed there for offenses committed as juveniles, meaning that 250,000 young lives were derailed before they even had a chance to begin. We need to help people understand this truth. Every single person who ends up on the registry learns some lessons and has actions they wish they could change. So why aren't we, as a movement, sharing more of these lessons with the world? I believe it should be one of our missions to teach people how to avoid landing on the registry in the first place. We often hesitate to discuss these lessons out loud because we fear being attacked. But there are certain warnings we would certainly give to our own children. For example, stop looking at pornography, because it could land you on the registry. And if you insist on watching pornography, protect yourself from accidentally accessing something illegal by using things like VPNs. We hesitate to say these things because we worry people will say we're protecting the pedophiles. But here's the truth. Most individuals charged with illegal images offenses are not attracted to minors. As the mother of a daughter who started puberty at 11, I can tell you firsthand how impossible it is to distinguish between a naked 15-year-old and a naked 18-year-old. Most porn actresses are young. People have an extremely limited ability to determine age, both in person and online. Yet we are ruining lives, including the lives of moms, wives, sisters, and children, all because of this impossible distinction. We also need to educate young people about age of consent laws. Many young people don't realize that minors cannot legally consent, no matter what they say. Even if a teenager initiates the encounter and insists they won't tell anyone, all it takes is a parent discovering a diary, catching them in the act, or simply deciding they disapprove, and suddenly someone is facing criminal charges. Parents have even pressed charges after once approving of a boyfriend or girlfriend simply because the breakup changed their mind. We should be telling our young children our teenagers about these dangers. Why aren't we teaching our young people to check IDs before they have sex? Why aren't we normalizing that and rewarding it? Law enforcement has treated consensual sexting as the production of child pornography. So why aren't we teaching about the dangers of sexting in our health classes and running ads about the dangers of sexting on YouTube and TikTok?
There are orgs that do that. They don't have funding.
Why aren't we funding the groups that are doing those things? Similarly, why aren't we warning people that law enforcement officers create fake profiles on adult dating sites to entrap users? Why aren't we asking the adult dating sites themselves to post sidebars about this? Why aren't we placing ads on porn sites, reminding people that if they accidentally click on something illegal, or even see something illegal, because you don't have to click on it, simply deleting the file is not enough. Law enforcement can and does recover these files, and many people have been arrested for images they never actively sought out. There are many ways this happens. Some illegal content is circulated through deceptive tactics like mislabeled videos, pop-ups, or redirects. Someone looking for legal adult content might unknowingly land on a site with illegal material. Some websites automatically download files without the user realizing it. Most web browsers store copies of viewed images and videos in a cache to speed up browsing, and some even use predictive loading so that it's on your computer even if you never viewed it. That means simply viewing something online can result in a saved file on your computer even if you never click download. Law enforcement uses forensic software to recover these cached files and use them as evidence. So why aren't we educating people to use VPNs, Freenet, or I2P for anonymous internet browsing? If law enforcement refuses to take down illegal images, we must teach people to protect themselves. And I understand that people are going to worry, but I think this is the same one. Besides, I believe that people who are actually looking at illegal images are already protecting themselves from arrest using methods like this. We are not here to shield predators. We are here to expose a system that preys on the innocent. And now we come to my big idea number 3. And this idea is hard, but I believe that we really need to start educating the public about how our current approach to child sexual abuse is the exact opposite of what we need. When a child is being inappropriately touched by their dad or their brother or their cousin, they do not want that person to be killed or imprisoned or tortured for the rest of their life. What they want is for the person to stop the behavior and acknowledge the harm they did and quit doing the hurtful things and make efforts to heal. We need to teach people that it is not a reasonable fear to worry about every one of those red dots on a map. It's not even helpful to the safety of children to be hateful toward the real people doing the harm. Don't even be hateful toward the actual grandpa. The only way that we are going to heal the small percentage of people who are actually dangerous to children is by responding to them with love and compassion. And I know what you're thinking. That is a long way from where we are now, and that's the truth. But we have to start somewhere. And the honest truth is that these people are not strangers on the streets. They're our grandpas and our brothers and our cousins and our sons and our daughters. And they groom kids for years before they break a law. We need to start training people how to watch out for this in their homes and in every space. We need to start, all the bystanders in every space need to start watching out for people who are at risk for touching kids, not to send them to prison, but to love them harder and help them not cross lines and refer them to our restorative circles to heal from the damage that was probably done to them when they were children, because this is the step we've been skipping for all these years. And my big idea number 4 is last but certainly not least. We need to start training families on how to address these issues in healthier ways. People who have experienced sexual abuse need to be able to share their own truths without fear of not being believed, or being asked to stuff down their feelings. Even the people who are threatening to burn us all at the stake. We need to encourage them to seek healing from the trauma they experienced. We need to start responding to their hatred with compassion and helping them seek out restorative justice circles that can provide them with the space they need to start healing. Public opinion is not set in stone. Throughout history, we've seen monumental shifts in the way people think about issues once considered untouchable. Ideas that were once widely accepted can be challenged and overturned when enough people are brave enough to speak out. There have been laws, lots of laws that politicians waited until people insisted on change. All of them, pretty much. 150 years ago, slavery was legal in America. 100 years ago, women weren't allowed to vote. 60 years ago, people of different races weren't allowed to get married. 30 years ago, I didn't know a single person who was openly gay. It just wasn't something people talked about. Then somewhere in the 1990s, the dam broke. People started coming out as gay in masses. And over time, public opinion followed. Fast forward to today, same-sex marriage is the law of the land, at least for a minute. Most Americans now personally know someone who is openly part of the LGBTQ community, and the stigma that once dominated that conversation has eroded. Around that same time, we were fighting a so-called war on drugs. Politicians on both sides of the aisle claimed we needed harsh punishments to stop drug use, leading to mass incarceration that disproportionately devastated communities of color. But over time, people started to see the truth. The war on drugs wasn't solving the problem. It was making the problem worse. Today, many states have legalized, or at least decriminalized marijuana, and the idea of locking people up for nonviolent drug offenses is starting to feel like a relic of the past. And then, of course, we have faith in law enforcement itself. Trust in the police used to be nearly unquestioned, but thanks to movements like Black Lives Matter and the growing awareness of police violence, especially against Black Americans, millions of people have begun to rethink the role of law enforcement. We've seen the statistics, we've seen the videos, and we've seen the government's response. More and more people are realizing that police don't always act in the best interest of the people they claim to protect. Some people are even supporting efforts to defund the police. That is a radical shift in public opinion. So if we've stopped automatically trusting the police in other areas, why are we trusting them to tell us who's dangerous and needs to be on a registry and on parole and probation? So let me ask you this. Could the sex offense registry be the next major shift in public opinion? I believe it can. No one wants any child to experience sexual harm. That is a given. We all want our children to live free of sexual abuse. But our current system is not working. Politicians don't care about us, and they really never have. Putting people on the registry wins votes. Writing new laws to appeal to people's sense of fear wins votes. All the talking points we've used for the last 30 years have not really moved the needle. In my opinion, our only option is to appeal to the masses. It's time for America to stop being afraid of the made-up disease and start being afraid of the cure. Everyone is in danger from the registry. Porn addiction is real and rampant, and it makes our kids and partners and parents vulnerable to this abuse by this corrupt system which has been masquerading as justice for the last 30 years. Next, I'd like to play a clip. It's 12 minutes, so it's a pretty long clip. This is a woman that I just found. Her name is Jessica Jordan, and she's developed a program to appeal to like help people fix their porn addictions. So I was hoping to be able to show it, but we don't have that option. So John's gonna press play.
Some of you are going to hate what I'm going to say right now, and it's the most controversial thing you will ever hear. Your gut intuition will hear and know the truth of my words, but your ego and judgment may try to cast this away. And you are involved with this, whether you're aware of it or not. I help men overcome sexual traumas, porn addiction, and sex-related addictions. What I'm about to share with you is something that everyone in our society needs to hear. It involves sexuality, prison time, children, judgment, hate, and healing. You see, there is a formula for healing. And when we heal, we no longer commit the same actions that we did when we were in a hurt state. And every sexual crime and every addiction is merely a symptom of unresolved trauma. Every time. Non-negotiable. And when we heal the trauma, we break the subconscious patterns that were creating the destructive behaviors. Sometimes these behaviors are things such as addictions, self-destructive acts. Sometimes these behaviors are sexual violence or offense against another individual. And there are actually prepubescent children who are registered sex offenders because those children were sexually abused at very young age. And when they were still a child and didn't understand it, they went on to commit a sexual act or crime or action against another child. And they weren't even aware of what they were doing. And now they're a criminal for life? Let's go back to the equation of healing. Healing equals safety plus vulnerability. Healing equals safety plus vulnerability. Know that for now, and let's put it on the back burner. And how do we break the cycle of people who are committing these sexual acts? It is not by shunning them or by having anger or judgment towards them, because that does not create the felt sense of safety that is mandatory for them to heal. When they heal, they change the subconscious programming to say something new and different about who they are and what they do. This means that when they heal through the felt sense of safety, they can rewrite the subconscious programming to be one that does not hurt other people anymore. So when we shun, we hate, we cast anger on those who have committed sexual crimes, it removes their ability to access the felt sense of safety when we do it on an individual level or a society level. It makes it very, very difficult for them to heal. And guess what? If they don't heal, then their subconscious programming is still set up to go commit those same actions. Those actions were born from their own subconscious wounding. The ones who commit sexual crimes as adults, the only reason why that happens is because when they were little children, they were sexually abused. And it got written deeply and viscerally into their subconscious programming as a deep part of their identity. And subconsciously, it's a part of their survival. Just like we will do anything for food, water, air, our sexuality is equally as important. And when it is rewritten so viscerally on a subconscious level in those young and early ages where they're imprinted upon so strongly, and then they go and act out as adults, say committing a sexual act against a child, it's what their subconscious mind knows and is programmed. Programmed like a computer program can only do what it's programmed to do and nothing else. Until you rewrite the programming. Until you rewrite the programming. The only way for the programming to get rewritten in these cases, for any addiction, any trauma, anyone who has committed a sexual crime, is for them to access the felt sense of safety. The felt sense of safety, the felt sense of safety. Healing equals safety plus vulnerability. When it is revealed about who they are and what they have done, and they are met in a way where they feel safe, that is the only condition which allows them to heal and rewrite the subconscious programming. This isn't rocket science. It's psychology mixed with neurobiology, neuropsychology. We create the neurochemical concoction for healing. We jack up that oxytocin and feel safe. And rewrite the subconscious programming on a deep and visceral level. Now, this does not ever mean that we condone the actions. Absolutely not. It means that we can come with an understanding, and that understanding allows for compassion to take place. That compassion allows for the felt sense of safety. And so by shunning, isolating, judging, or wishing death threats upon those who have committed these crimes, that is the very thing that perpetuates these crimes because it denies the opportunity for healing by the ones who are the most wounded. And let me ask you this. Let's create a hypothetical situation where, say, there's a 5-year-old little boy who is sexually abused. It is now a deep and visceral part of his subconscious programming. And when you hear the story of his sexual abuse, that poor and terrified 5-year-old little boy, we naturally have compassion for him. We naturally have compassion for him. We want to save him and rescue him and protect him and love him and nurture him and allow him to heal and do whatever it takes for that little boy to heal. Well, guess what? That little boy is going to grow up, hit adolescence, hit puberty, experience sexuality in a new way as an adult man. And that same subconscious programming is still there because he has not healed from it yet. So at what point did we switch from having love and compassion for that little boy who was hurt and switch to having hate and rage and death threats towards him? At no point did he ever deserve the hate or the judgment. He only ever deserved the kindness and the compassion so that he could heal, so that he would not commit those crimes. And I will tell you what needs to happen. We as a society need to create a very, and I mean very, safe place for these men and sometimes women to voice what happened to them as children so that they feel safe enough to heal from it, so that they do not go and commit the crime, commit the act, and perpetuate the trauma, the pain, the PTSD, the cycle. The way we break the cycle is not by throwing them in prison and isolating them and hating on them. They'll get out of prison one day, and that prison atmosphere, most likely in many cases, did not provide the felt sense of safety. No, 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 no. We need to provide the felt sense of safety to the strongest degree capable so that they heal from it and do not go on to commit the crime, the act. Do not go on to pass on the trauma. This is the only way it can happen. This is the only way it can happen. So when you hear the story of an individual who is a registered sex offender, it is your duty to send them love and kindness and compassion. It is your duty to send them love and compassion and kindness. It is your duty to do whatever it is you can to help them to tap into the felt sense of safety, a neurophysiological state that involves elevated oxytocin. Healing cannot take place without this. And it can be cultivated so much easier when there is another individual or group of individuals or even society who is helping to supply that felt sense of safety by replacing judgment with compassion and understanding. And every time we have the true understanding, judgment automatically gets replaced by compassion every time. If the compassion is not there, if you are not putting out the compassion, it's for one reason and one reason only. You are lacking the understanding. When you have the understanding, your judgment will get replaced with compassion 100% of the time, no matter who the individual is and no matter what the story is. And I know that it's so easy to just get into that anger place of judgment. And when we vocalize it and voice it, it's actually an ego boosting activity because you're announcing to the world, oh, I would never be like that. In fact, I'm so far removed in my identity of someone who would be like that. Let me voice how angry I am about people who do those types of things. It is actually a selfish ego boosting activity rooted in fear. It's a selfish, ego-boosting activity rooted in fear when we show up with anger and towards those who are suffering the most. And those who are suffering the most oftentimes are the ones who have committed the most horrendous crimes.
Okay.
We do not ever condone the crimes. We do not ever allow them to just be here without doing anything. No, it is our duty to do whatever we can to help prevent and eliminate those actions that are crimes that are born from a place of trauma every time. If we all operated on this would actually rewrite the entire prison system. It would be turned around so quickly. What if instead of prison, it was called the Felt Sense of Safety Centers? The Center for the Felt Sense of Safety. Because that is what we need. That is how we cultivate safety within ourselves as individuals, with the individuals who are hurting, and on a grand society level. By having felt sense of safety centers, not prisons, felt sense of safety centers, rooted in healing, centered around healing. All right, so let me check in with you. How is your intuition doing on this? Your intuition and your ego are going to be on opposite sides of the spectrum. Your ego will have the judgment, the anger, the hate. Your intuition will have the kindness, the love, the understanding, the compassion. Where along that spectrum are you right now? And have you shifted anywhere along this spectrum as a result of hearing these words? Have an amazing day, and if you know someone who needs to heal from a sex or porn-related addiction, send them my way.
All right, you could find her on YouTube. She's got a channel called Self-Crafted Kings. She has a green light from the governor of California to put her program into practice in California, in the prisons, I guess? I don't know exactly where. I'm not sure the details, but she could use some clients. And Self-Crafted Kings is her YouTube group. She calls it Leap of Courage is another thing you could search for. Her name is Jessica Jordan. Public opinion has changed before, and it can change again. But politicians will not lead the way on this issue. There isn't a single elected official in this country willing to risk their career to take down the registry, at least not yet. That's why the responsibility falls on us, the people affected, the families suffering, the communities watching this injustice unfold. We must be the ones to tell the truth. We must be the ones to educate the public, and we must be the ones to demand change. Because history has told us one thing: when enough people speak out, the world does listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Everyone, big round of applause. Good job.
Thank you.
Real quick, up here I do have Florida Action Committee's UN petition for civil rights violations for the registry. We are at like 7,837 signatures at this moment. So we're trying to get past that 10,000 mark. So if anyone hasn't signed it, you can come up here, scan the code. The other thing is we have our poster board up here to do your signs. We've got markers, stuff like that. I would suggest maybe try to find something personal. You know, we all know reoffense rates, that kind of stuff. But what really drives you to this movement? So to me, it was never about me, it was about my kids. So me, I want to quit destroying families, because that is why I'm here and why I do what I do, is for my kids, hoping one day they can't be persecuted for my actions.
I would suggest if you're doing that, go over it multiple times so it's much darker.
Well, I'm not an artist.
No, same words. Just
Oh,
and
gotcha.
yeah, we'll help you.
There we go. Someone's got my back here at least. So we're gonna have lunch. We have grilled chicken, hot dogs, hamburgers, all the fixings over there. Everything's here for the conference. Remember, bathrooms are here. We'll regroup about 5 till 1, and Danelle with Shine Voices and Joe with Pathfinder will be our next presentation. Thank you, guys. Oh, my bad. I forgot somebody. Sorry, right after lunch is Stephanie. I said it earlier, and then it would be followed by Danelle and Joe.